I'm looking into the different aspects of the things, and what motivated me this past week or so, and I perhaps jumped the gun, should have prepared a little bit longer, but I can follow up on it. But such significant discoveries have been made in some areas that you find out with a glyphosate, which comes from Roundup, is causing so much health damage within the body. And they haven't really been able to define that until just recently. And in doing so, if you find the cause, then how do you handle what has happened? And there's a variety of things there. First of all, prevention means cure. So most glyphosate is coming through, or glyphosate is coming through your food, your vegetables, things like that, even wheat. In fact, now what they found is 98% of the people in the study who said they're gluten intolerant are not, in fact. And what's doing it is really the glyphosate. Really is the answer. So glyphosate comes from, of course, Roundup. It's used by a lot of commercial names, including Roundup, but you can buy it generically and spray it. The problem is it doesn't break down in the soil, and so it moves through the food chain. And even with, I've got studies that I've been looking at here in this morning and last week, they find that most things in the soil will break down over a period of time. They have what they call a river water die-away test, and that says how long it will last before it is decomposed. There is no limit on this Roundup ingredient. It's just there, and it doesn't get broken down. In fact, in some of the studies with soils that they did, where the rest of the nutritive content of the soil was degrading and degenerating into more usable forms, of course, as nature does. But glyphosate was not. It, in fact, it actually became more active with it, especially where the nutritional value went down. Now, all that being said, it's a great weed killer. It kills about everything. But the residual and the things that we're finding now happening is I believe it's one of those really big, gigantic mistakes that's made in healthcare. You can see right now, just if I switch horses for a minute, Johnson & Johnson is in massive lawsuits, most of which they've lost, but some of which they've won. And it's all about talc and baby powder. And it causes endometrial cancer and a few other reproductive cancers, especially women are very vulnerable to it. And what do you do with your baby when you diaper it? You put baby powder on. Everyone's done that. Well, now it's come to the point where enough people have gotten, the science was there, and for a long time, but now enough people have gotten cancer that they've been looking into it, to what it was, endometrial cancer, and found out there's a big correlation, a direct correlation between baby powder, which this will shock you, but the molecule of talc that's in baby powder is almost identical to asbestos molecule, which is such a dangerous cancer-causing agent. So you might ask yourself, and I certainly have too, but I think I don't sit around like D.W. talking to myself, looking out the window at snowflakes. When I ask myself some things, I come back with what my experience and wisdom and all the things that I've been doing brings me to a conclusion of sorts. And with that, you have a massive array of lawsuits on a product that was proven to cause endometrial cancer over 30 years ago. And you know what? Over 30 years ago, I published that to all of my distributors. I mean, that's in the early 1990s with this. And I published it to all of my distributors and told them, here's the studies. And it didn't have a big shockwave. But I said, all female babies or women, children, girls, they're all vulnerable to this if they're using in talc. Very vulnerable. And the studies are showing that it is so effective in creating endometrial cancer that it's almost undeniable. Well, it went undenied for about 30 years, so lawyers got a hold of it and started suing them. Now, when I announced it 30 years ago or so, there wasn't actually a big rush with people, oh my God, let's go out and let's tell everybody. Nobody did. But see, especially at that time, there was no internet, and research was extremely difficult, and communication isn't like it is on the call right here now. But I tried to put out the information on it, put it on the harmful ingredients list, and if you look at Sizzle Safe, you'll see it's on that too. But what I have done is taken, and I made a baby powder, only I made it out of cornstarch. And it could be refined in a way where it was just almost identical, and I put it out in the marketplace. It hardly sold. In fact, as the sales were so low on it, even though we were promoting it, that we finally discontinued it from the line. So anyway, there was an alternative to it. However, I always make a pledge if I find something that I believe is potentially harmful. Now, sometimes you find things that are and may not be, or it's very questionable. But if I believe they're potentially harmful, especially significance, I will do everything in my power to inform people, and also I will not make products that contain it. So I I took Color Cosmetics, which is probably the next biggest offender to women because of the talc that's in it, especially the powders but things like mascara and blushers and all of those things are loaded with it. And the problem is the molecule is so small it goes through the skin. See, and then it accumulates in certain areas, especially, I won't get through all the science of it, but certain areas and out throughout the body, and it leads to endometrial cancer. So now that we know that, now it's been proven, now that a company has lost hundreds of millions of dollars in lawsuits, why are they still selling it? Now they won some. So this will have to be for you to make your own judgment. I have my opinion. And what I read from the industry was that, yes, the losses are great, but it's perhaps their number one selling product, and the profits are so massive that they can't ignore it, and so they're going to keep on. If what they lose in paying lawsuits continues, they're making more than enough profit to justify that cost. Now, I know some of you are sitting there horrified at hearing that, but I think if you've been with us very long, you understand you can't trust big pharma, big cosmetic companies. They're farces, cosmetic companies are, with what they do and say, and they have very little regard for its consumers. But here with all of this going on, why hasn't the FDA banned it? Well, because it's grandfathered in, it's approved. That's for exactly the same reason that cigarettes can't be removed. Cigarettes is by far the most dangerous health hazard we have in our lives if we smoke, and we can't get rid of it, even though you couldn't get it approved now, but because it's been grandfathered in, so there it is with that. We also now have an issue what I did, I went into all my Color Cosmetics. I took everything. I took all talc out of anything that was there, and I campaigned about it, and nothing too much has happened. Some people who, enough customers and distributors have heard about it that they look at it and are genuinely concerned for them and their families and their loved ones, so they have tried to find other alternatives to do it. I don't know if I'll go back into making a starch-based baby powder, but perhaps as this thing comes on, because I'm now studying the assault on children's skin, which is quite different than adult skin and babies, and there's a whale of a lot of damage being done to our future health when we're a baby. And so I'm going to be working on that. I'm working on it right now with it, but it's a laborious, time-consuming thing, but worth doing, don't you think? So if prevention beats cure, then why use a talc product, right? And so you can do that, and you can avoid that. Now you have some in your system, and the problem is it attaches to fatty tissues, and because of that, it is very hard to get removed because it's not water soluble, so to speak. Now, when you're talking about glycophosphate, it's not the same as talc. You can't just ignore it, but it's everywhere. And it even drifts from field to field, and it's transferred with even blowing soil, since it doesn't degrade in the soil. As the winds come through the areas that have been using it, they carry the soil over into the next fields, and they become contaminated if they're not with glycophosphates. But it's been used so much, the contamination now, scientists are realizing, is so significant that they're looking for answers to do it. Well, I am too. Probably the number one question I have answered or asked you for me to answer for a number of years has been, what can we do about autism and ADD, ADHD, those neurological afflictions that people have? And quite candidly, I haven't had some good answers, but now I do with this, and so I'm going to help you that way. Since almost all foods, almost all contaminate from glycophosphates comes from the food that we consume. We have to consume food, but we can go after the glycophosphate that's there, and when we do, we can do it with a product like OrganiCleanse, because OrganiCleanse goes down and solubilizes it. See, in the soil, it's not soluble. But the ingredients in OrganiCleanse, so when you soak all your vegetables, and there's nothing in it that is a vegetable that I would not soak in it before, at least for 5 minutes, before I ever used them, and then washed them off, because, quite frankly, folks, you don't see any imperfections in that produce that you're buying, for the large part, but what's underneath the surface is very potentially harmful, toxic, dangerous, cancer-causing, health damaging, all of those things. So it's there, and you don't know it's there, but how do you get it off? Do you peel everything you eat, and how deep do you peel it? So the simple answer is, I have a molecular structure in there that will solubilize the glyphates that are involved in it, and with it, they become water soluble, so they come out into solution. Then as you drain the water and rinse them off, it washes off whatever residue is there, and quite frankly, you're getting most of it. They did some studies on people consuming the glyphosate in their diets, and they found that 98% of it that you ingest is retained. I believe that was the figure. Quite shocking. In other words, it's retained in your body, and it doesn't degrade in your body, and it continues to build up. So this is a big premise for it. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of other ideas these are my concepts. So you can't say they're proven, but they're based on science that I have found that makes it reasonable enough to me that, in spite of the fact, we're not making medicines, so we're not creating things that we intend to prevent or cure and violate the FDA regulations that are there. We have to say supports the body in its fight against this or that or the other. It's a matter of not what the ingredients can do or might do. It's a matter of the legalities, which are basically, which are imposed by the FDA, but Big Pharma is the one directing this, and big agriculture and those things. So you want to, if they are so potent to creating autism in all of its different forms, then the first rule of medicine is do no harm, isn't it? So the first rule is prevent them getting in your body, and that way you can clean them with OrganiCleanse. However, there's been another quite an amazing discovery, and I'm going to have to decide what to do with it, but I can tell you what to do with it right now. And what they found out is chlorine dioxide, a chemical. It's not like chlorine in your swimming pool, but it's based on chlorine. Chlorine dioxide is a very aggressive reactive chemical, and it will react with the glyphates, and so when it reacts with it, it breaks it down and it makes it so it becomes water soluble too. Well, we're trying to do that with the surfactant system we have in OrganiCleanse, but now here's one that goes into the molecule itself and degrades it so that it now is no longer what it was. But the problem with chlorine dioxide is it's so terribly corrosive. And with that, if you put some in your mouth or on your arm, it'd burn you with that type of thing. But fortunately, a number of years ago, I discovered a company that makes anthium chlorine dioxide, and it's called stabilized chlorine dioxide. It is so safe, I put it in my eyes once in a while if I ever have some sort of, I think, a film buildup or perhaps a bacterial or some type of thing, and I put it in, and it's balanced for the pH of the eye. It doesn't hurt it a bit. It's approved, if you want to buy it in whatever quantities, it's approved to treat potable water also. So here's a product so safe, so powerful, and so dangerous, but now it's not because it's stabilized. And that's the basis of what we're using in our Terminator mouthwash and our Super Shine toothpaste, because it's not just with the Roundup ingredient. It's also that you build up a lot of things like plaque within, and you get pyorrhea, gum disease, all kinds of things like that. But a lot of it's caused by sulfite bonding, and I won't get too technical, but what happens with chlorine dioxide, it will break the disulfide bonds, and that's one of the reasons that it's so effective in removing plaque and doing it. Even in the stabilized form will do that, but nothing but health to your mouth. So my suggestion, after I've told you all of this, and I'm not as organized to put it out the way I'd like to, but you'll get the picture and you can listen to it, is if I was doing my food, I would use OrganiCleanse, and I would put in, if you had a big-sized bowl of fruits or vegetables that you're washing, and let's remember, include fruits with that too, anything that's grown that way. They all can be contaminated with it. But if you do it and you'll put in about, and this is just a guesstimate, but about an ounce, half an ounce minimum, 15 mil, to an ounce, 30 mil, into that solution and mix it around. It is absolutely compatible with the solution, but while the solution is bringing everything out and solubilizing it, in theory, and I have to say in theory because it hasn't been proven in what I'm necessarily saying, even though they have shown that chlorine dioxide does that, but in theory it will be removed by much of it by the OrganiCleanse, and the molecules which are not soluble, so residual, locked in, can be broken down. Now that's quite an amazing thing, isn't it? So it was so significant because it has such a profound effect on autism that studies are showing a number of things on autism. I'm going to try and rip through them real quick because it's such an important part of our society that didn't used to exist. But then how long ago did they bring out Roundup? So think about all those types of things with it. They're all related. So they've had studies where simply in looking at the glycophosphate residuals that are built up in the body, they found some ways to remove them. And some of those ingredients are actually in products that we manufacture. And we can't make the claim for the ingredient because the formulation hasn't been tested for it, but the law called the SHEA, it's the Dietary Supplemental Health Education Act, allows you to look at studies and to make conclusions and then for your health. And that was so hard fought. Big Pharma and Big Medicine was all against that. They wanted to make vitamins and supplements of all kinds as regulated as drugs and sold through prescriptions at that time in 1994. But the SHEA, thanks to some very, very caring and brilliant, I guess brilliant, I don't know if it's a word or not, but effective senators in the United States Senate, one from Orrin Hatch here from Utah, and Harkin, I believe, is from Iowa, House of Representatives, and they put it together. And so now it says, it basically comes back to our freedom of speech. We should have the right to know, to be able to choose and use products which we think are good for us, or avoid those that we think are not. So now I'm going to give you a quick run-up on a couple of other things that I found that has to do with autism. Now, especially in the brain, so it's throughout all of the body, and there's all kinds of carcinogenic studies going on about that, but it really affects the neurological system and the cognitive functions. So in the brain, they found that it gets into the folds of the brain and just keeps accumulating. It's almost like it's filling up and compacting itself in. And so you get in, the brain development is severely inhibited, scientists believe, because of the residue from this compound, glyphosate. But with that, there's a way that it can be, in theory, in studies, preliminary studies, but are very impressive to me, enough so that I want you to be able to look at them so that you have the right to know, choose, and use products that you think are good for you. And, of course, avoiding them. So we talked about avoidance with stabilized chlorine dioxide and Organiclans, and then we're talking about breaking them down. So now, what can do that in the body? Well, chlorine dioxide can do that in the body too, and in a stabilized form. It's possible, conceivable. We can't say because it has not been tested that way, at least to the point of where we could say absolutely, but it's significant testing that I have seen, in my opinion. And so as a consequence, if there were a way to ingest a certain amount of chlorine dioxide, stabilized, of course, with that, you might do a lot to break down the residues that have built up throughout your body. When you have 100% go in and 98% is retained, you've got a serious health hazard. When you're eating all of the produce and fruits and vegetables, you don't want to have your family healthy. Look at the accumulation that comes. It's enormous. And even as they spray it, you get drift in the air. It goes from soil to soil. So this is a very serious issue, but one that if they do anything, you're looking at probably 20 or 30 years from now before anything comes out. That's the way they work. They want to thoroughly analyze it. And this is like big business to them. They go on and do it this way. Same with sales of baby powder. It's done because it's big business. So now if you could ingest that. So I don't know. I'm going to take a look at some possibilities. I do know once in a while, if I ever get something like a flu virus in my stomach, I'll usually drink some of the Terminator, the mouthwash. Actually, I mix it with a little baking soda because it helps to knock the pH in the stomach while the stabilized chlorine dioxide can be effective. And so I do that. But to tell you to do that and to put your children on it or other people or adults in that, that's a more laborious task, and I don't know how easy that's going to be for you to do with it, and it's a new routine. But here's an answer for you to consider so that you can make your own judgment. The other thing that is very important is they found that there are some severe deficiencies found in very large groups of autism from all ages, and it's not gender specific. And with that, they found that deficiencies in some things are so significant that you could have like 30 or 40% of the people that were within, I'm thinking about another thing too, they're with this condition, that it just, a dietary supplement literally might stop it or save it. And here's what they're saying. It's an open opportunity. This is what they're talking about with some big research going on over in Switzerland right now. It says, although many intervention studies have been occurring, it's found that vitamin D, EPA, and DHA, that's omega-3 forms, have been shown an apparent benefit in neuropsychotic disorders. The mechanisms of these effects are underexplored. This is the main reason why positioning of a supplement in this area, autism, has not been done up to now. Well, that's basically what I'm telling you here. So, where are you going to get vitamin D and where are you going to get Super Omega Plus? I can tell you where you can get it. That it is loaded in Super Omega Plus. These omega-3 oils, and plus there's 3 varieties of them, and no one else I've seen uses even 2, and we use all 3. And they're structurally similar but different. And one is 40 times more potent in one area, another 60 times more potent in another area. But they come from the food chain. Starts with algae, makes an omega-3. Krill, shrimp-like creatures, feed on it, and they convert it to another form of omega-3s. And then fish eat krill, and it converts to a fish omega-3. And of course, fish eat fish, and that continues on that way. So with that, here they're finding this is such a significant thing. And here we have Super Omega Plus, and you look at the power that's in that. Now, vitamin D is very important too, and we've got it there. We certainly have got it also in Encompass if you're taking a multivitamin, which is the most important, number 1 selling supplement in the world. Not for us, but in the world, multivitamins are number 1. So we have got good doses. We've got the right kinds in it, and we've also got large amounts of vitamin D3, which is the effective one, in our calcium K2 product. Now, that leads me into another area. Here you've got vitamin D, and then you've got your omega oils. So now here's a solution, or a potential solution, for something that's nutritionally supplement could affect. And so now we've looked at breaking it down. We're removing it from the produce. Now we're going to go on and we're going to say, okay, what makes us more vulnerable? What is lacking? And they found in large numbers of people, it's these deficiencies in vitamin D, vitamin D, and also in the omega pluses or omega 3s. So we've got omega 3s like on steroids in Super Omega Plus, and we've got plenty of vitamin D. If you want to supplement a little with it, there's a big choice. So that's pretty exciting news if you're concerned about it for yourself or somebody else. And since we're all consuming these things, you better be washing your produce and fruits and vegetables with Organic Cleanse, and I would be giving it a shot. A Terminator wouldn't be just on my bathroom shelf. I'd have it sitting there right in the kitchen sink, so I could give a little shot of that in there too, so you get a 1-2 bang out of it for working. But now from out of nowhere, there came a study on this, and what they found is that mineralization has a great effect on organic pollutants, and which is, of course, the glyphosate, which comes from Roundup. And they found that in large numbers of individuals, large percentages, like 20 or perhaps somewhere give or take, that percent of the people, that if they simply took an not a simple one, but an amino acid complex that had certain types of amino acids in, and they don't have to be in balance, they just have to be there in number, that you could, maybe 20%, I'm just guessing, if that's what it is. I don't think it's as high as 30, but maybe 20% of the people would respond to it, and Alzheimer's might not be a factor. Now, we can't say that because we can't prevent or cure anything, but I can tell you one thing. I looked at the types of amino acids that are in this, and I found out, hey, folks, we got them all. They're in our product. They're in our products, especially Sizzle Rip. It is unbelievable. And when you see 10X come out with of the other things it has, including magnifying even the effects of sizzle rip. You're going to be astonished with this. But, you know, perception is reality, so you have to perceive what the situation is and then turn it into reality of doing something, either preventing it, breaking it down, or perhaps removing it from the body. And that can be done by breakdown, so solubilize, but there are other ways to do it too. So with this blend of amino acids, I tell you what, if I had anyone that I'm on sizzle rep myself, but I'd have anybody on that because I've made the mistakes that everybody else has, and I've eaten all of this organic produce for all of my life, and so I'm certainly have a residual buildup. It's impossible not to, in my opinion. So anyway, here you have some amino acids that come in, and just telling what they are. I look at the thing and I thought, I got everything here is in our sizzle rip. Or if you want to throw a calcium K2 with it, which people ought to be having too, look what you would get out of that combination. It's unbelievable. So now there's one more that I want to talk about, and it's some of these studies are very extensive. And when you read it, I mean, I tell you get a brain cramp like having a dinner conversation with Doc Fizz. It's just very difficult to handle. But when you're reading these studies, they are now looking at things that are potent. Potent is the wrong word. The FDA says that's a drug claim. That are very powerful in supporting the body to, like chelate, these glycophosates into themselves. In other words, like a magnet can pick up nails or iron or steel, anything like that. They'll attract it to it. So there are certain compounds that can do that too, that preliminary studies on science are having quite a profound effect. I'm not going to go into that into great detail yet because I don't want people to get in an overbalanced situation, but I want to give you all the options. But one of the ingredients, the most effective one they found in that, is in our renovator for joints. Now, I'm not going to put out all the details yet till I can put this out in a correlated way so that you will be able to more easily understand it. I know this is technical science, and I'm hitting some of the things, and I'm trying to bring it into where you can understand it. But essentially, you have to take these scientific studies, and some of them are agony to go through. But if you know what you're doing, you can do it. And people in that field, hey, they're like accountants. They love to do that kind of stuff. I don't. But I'm a treasure hunter, so I look through those, and I know what I'm talking about and know what most of the terms and concepts are. And out of that, I can pick a gem here and there and use it. So we've got now an array of ingredients that can be very effective for you to use. Since ADD and autism, ADHD, in all its forms, is neurologically generated, what do you think you ought to have on top of all of that? Brain vitality is my suggestion. Of course, brain vitality's got lots of things with it, and amazingly enough, it has a compound. I can't say that it does within the body because the study haven't been tested there, but it reacts with the glycophosphates that are in vitro, in other words, in the lab, not in the body, with that kind of thing to break them down. So you've got yourself an array of different ingredients here, and many of these you're going to be using anyway. So when you consider what simple things should I take every day, Renovator, yeah, I think so. Brain Vitality, yes. Sizzle Rip, absolutely. Super Omega Plus, without a doubt on that type of thing. And you've got yourself a complement to use those and take the OrganiCleanse with the stabilized chlorine dioxide, and you've got yourself some pretty good tools to fight this with. Because even if you don't have it, your neurological functions are being degraded, and now they're finding out that the buildup of these glycophosphates that are within the brain are really triggering dementia. Now, dementia is a lot of reasons, but they're finding it's having a really profound effect on dementia and Alzheimer's. too. So when you look at the complexity of these things, and you see what they are, but it also brings you back to how spectacular sizzle products are. I read these and I look at them, I take this, I've got 8 or 10 studies here in front of me right now that I'm looking at, that I'm going to correlate and put out for you to see. But as I look at all those, I think, wow, we got the answer here. This will solve this. This might be the possibility here. Those are the things that I see in our products. And so without making, there was maybe one change it isn't a change, it was just an addition or in strength, which I'll probably do, but I don't want it to be said right now because I don't want anybody knowing about it until I get it done. But we have an arsenal there of weapons to go after this thing with, and you can do it now with a vengeance if you're dedicated to. But remember, perception's reality. So what is your reality now or in the future? Well, is it going to be better? Probably not, worse. So if we're aging, and we can fight aging. Aging is, we can conquer aging now because it's decay and degeneration. We end the decay and we regenerate, then we've solved aging. You don't age anymore in theory, and then you start progressively, if you're building more cells and you're losing, you start growing back younger. So we've got a lot of that in aging, but that's important because you keep yourself a good, healthy body. So if I was using a product, I'd be on products like the Age Pill, TSX, Brain Vitality. Those are so important for that. And then what comes along with it? Super Omega Pluses, I'd be saying using those types of things. So you can see, and do I want I've been really diligently testing the Sizzle Rip, and I have seen a significant improvement in my muscle size, texture, and strength just over this less than a year or so that I've been using it, just myself personally. Now, that isn't a scientific study, but if the results are self-evident, hey, I can live with that. So I don't need to know all of the things just like you don't. We need to know just enough to make an intelligent decision and do it. So with that, I became so motivated. I said last week, I'll be on this week, on Monday, and we're going to talk about these great discoveries that have been made, and they are significant ones. So there's a lot of other things that are involved, and when you get looking at more dynamics that can be added to it, just put this in your mind. How many of you would use most of those products that we have anyway for other purposes? Well, I think most of you would if you could. All right, and to add one here or there is not a big deal. And you get the benefits that they were designed for, but now you get this huge benefit side effect that comes on it with these types of things that are damaging our health, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, neurological diseases of all sorts with that. And so now you've got enough to work with products you're already taking, adding a few with it, and you've got the best answer that I can give you to support your body in its fight against it, and that's the way we have to say it with that thing. So there's a few more things that are going to be added, and I'll tell you about them. There's especially a very big study out on the effect of hormonal dysfunction in boys causing autism, and not in girls, but in boys. And with that, I believe we can provide a supplement that will support your body in its fight for it. But it ain't here now. But look for it around the first of the year, and it'll be here. You'll say, man, this is a 10. There's no doubt about it with what it can do. So we're sitting right now in limbo, so to speak. Most people will know somebody that does this, and this Ritalin is so damaging to the systems that are given. There's also, but there is one that's rapamycin, if you want to look at that for a pharmaceutical, that's had good effect on autism also. But here's the array of what they found. And these are significant enough that many millions or tens of millions of dollars in research funds have gone to investigating this. So now they're saying, oh yeah, we don't know how it works yet, but we know it's working. And so we're going to go into the research of finding out how long that is. Well, I don't want to wait 10 or 20 years, do you? With that kind of thing, because that's how the researchers do it. And as a consequence, I'm going to take their studies, put them together to a certain point, give you references on them, and then you can, and I can't recommend products necessarily, I will in a certain way, but you can look through these ingredients. Oh, omega-3s and vitamin D is good, I'll take Super Omega Plus. See, that's the kind of decision that I would make with it. Oh, minerals, I would take, and amino acids, I would take, well, even Spectramax would be effective too. I mean, you have to have a variety, but I'd definitely be on Sizzle Rip and Calcium K2. And so there's a lot of things here to go off, and I wanted to give it to you in a more systematic order. But what it is, I've thrown it out. You can listen to this again, and you can categorize them in 3 areas. What are you going to do to, first of all, what are you going to do to eliminate, say, the contaminants from it? And so we have answers there. Okay, so if it's nutritionally, can be nutritionally affected, what types of nutrients work for what types of applications? And we've got that. So that's second. Third is, what can we do if we want to take something and we want to return it back to where it will actually go after the problem, make an environment where it can be chelated from the body and removed and broken down. That's the third category. So I think we have, I don't know anyone that's got answers. The science is, I see no one doing anything with it except researchers, but I researched the research and I found it. And I think it is so significant I want to pass it on to you. So with one little thing, and I've gone on way too long with this, but we've made improvements in all of our products. They're always in constant change, and we've changed the age pill. Not changed, the basic things are still there, but we've added things to it 4 or 5 times now. So we've got a whole new addition to it that it's produced now. I don't know where it's in circulation, but you have to sell through all your stocks, and then you'll have another super formula come along, a super formula made into a super formula with it, and that's happening right now, and you'll learn about that, especially if you look at some of the neurological in particular, and NAD and telomerase and that comes from extracts from certain types of sage with it, but it's highly concentrated extract. But we know what they are. We're added into it. It'll be there in rosemary or rosmarinic acid and ursolic acid. And I'm going on too far, but I want to tell you, the age pill is the greatest discovery in the history of human health, and we just make it better and better. But the basic fundamentals of cleaning up the cell, removing glycation and draining the sludge, the lipofuscin that builds up and becomes all gooey within the cell, and then removing those and then providing precursors to making very large amounts of ADP, which is brought up. And you can think of it this way. It creates, as you produce lots of it, it creates what they call homeostasis of the cell, and that means it reaches its maximum potential. And it's like a light bulb. You can put it on a rheostat, and rheostat, you can turn it down to where it's very dull, and then you just turn it up. You see it get brighter and brighter. It'll get bright to a certain point, and that's the limit of it. If it's a 100-watt light bulb, that's your limit. If it's a 250, that's your limit. Be even brighter. So cells operate with a certain electrical charge within it, not a certain, but they're run by electrical impulses, communications, all of those things. So now if you turn around and you take this and you say, okay, now I've got a product here which is incredible. So what can these other things do? As you see them come out, I'll be publishing, we'll putting our science page up on a lot of these things, and you'll just see them added and added and added and coming on. And you know what? With these changes, the things we do, it's in flux. It will never quit. And I don't want it to quit. And people get upset with me here, and even our people that are in registration of products, because they say you're changing formulas more than any, some said more than any company we've ever dealt with. And I say, when I find something better, I put it in it. And I just don't throw it in. I mean, I do enough research on it so I know what we're doing. So you'll see a huge formulation change come in transfusium too before too long. So these things are always in a state of flux. But I've taken up more time than I really should have, but I thought this was significant enough to you that you would want to know it, and I'm going to be putting these things out so that you can read them and determine what you want to do. And that's the way that the law allows you to do it and us to do it for you. So I'll turn the time back